for joining me today on this version of ThriveCAST. I am here with Mr. Daniel Woodroffe, and he is the founder and president of DWG, a leading firm with an eye for modern design and a really deep commitment to shaping urban spaces. So he has a transatlantic presence. He's not only in Austin, Texas, but he's also in London. And he has built DWG into a powerhouse of landscape architecture, really blending innovation with a really strong sense of place. So, Daniel, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Shannon. It's a real pleasure to be here. You spoilt my comedic entry. I was going to say that I grew up in Tyler, Texas, and went to acting school and got a fake English accent. But yes, I grew up in England and been here 26 years.
Well, as a fellow Austin native, I am so excited to have a neighbor on the show today. So tell me about DWG. What are you guys all about in the industry?
Well, firstly, it's a real pleasure to be talking with you today. DWG is a landscape architect first and foremost, but we've always, since our inception back in 2010, been passionately really striving to be a different design firm. We branded ourselves around the construct of the urban architectural landscape and have been really passionate about the role and relationship of landscape and architecture in our built environments. And over the years, that's morphed into really in-depth conversations about the public realm, about our streets, our sidewalks, our parks, our plazas, our green roofs, from hospitality to public work, and how, as landscape architects, we're giant pairs of knitting needles around civil engineering and architecture, and we're
Yeah.
always binding everything together. But it's also about sociology, about the environment, about sustainability, and not just green sustainability, but economic sustainability as well. So for us, landscape architecture is a really broad conversation, but for us, it's been a very explicit and focused conversation around how we evolve our built environments.
Well, and I mean, Austin, Texas is a perfect place for that because all of those things are really tying what Austin, Texas is trying to define in an industry, especially with landscape architecture. So, what are your clients? Who do you guys serve in not only in Austin but in London?
Yeah, so I guess that was the other piece that I failed to mention in that, we started in 2010 as an Austin firm, grew to be a kind of a Texas-based regional firm, then grew to be a national firm. And this last June actually had the opportunity to start the office in London. And I say
That's
that
so
because,
funny because it
yeah,
I thought it would be opposite.
no, it was always a dream. It was always a professional kind of fantasy to say Austin's been an amazing place. As I said, I've been in the States, in Texas for 26 years and planned on staying for two, um, and got hooked.
Yeah.
Of course, fell in love with a girl, got a dog, got a house, got married. I mean, all that good stuff as well.
Right.
Austin's been this amazing conversation of embracing change and
Yeah.
evolution of a built environment with nature and the role of landscape. But our clients have always been really formed more from the organic of relationships. And
Okay.
from the very first day of leaving my former employer that I was with for 13 years, my mentor, my steward, of coming to the United States and starting the practice, there was two groups of people in 2010. There was a small group that said, "You're an idiot. This is a recession and this is a bad idea." And that was mildly terrifying. And then there was a vocal majority of people that said, "It's about time. It's a brilliant time to be scrappy, nimble, agile, and adventurous in your conversation around design." And many of those individuals are still our clients today. Those people that have become sincere friends that have given us repeat business. Several of our architecture friends have We've built many projects together in Central Texas. We've built projects in Florida, in Oklahoma, in New York City. We've been taken to Abu Dhabi and Bahrain and far off wild places because of the relationships we, in some cases, literally have on Congress Avenue.
That.
And so for us, that client relationship, the spirit of communication, friendship, camaraderie that has been formed
Yeah.
both with architects, developers, peers, has been amazing. And it has caused us to deviate away from a kind of a standard advertising methodology. It has allowed
Yeah.
us, our social media, to be more about telling stories than necessarily advertising services. And it's allowed us to grow in the direction that I think we wanted to grow with people around us that, to a larger extent, already believe what we're bringing to the table.
So, are a lot of your clients, are they public, or
Hmm.
do you focus more on private? Because those two sometimes intersect, but can oftentimes be really different.
I mean, over the course of the last 15 years, that's varied. We've
Yeah, okay.
always focused deliberately to be as diverse a firm as possible so that we're more resilient to social economic changes.
Yeah.
When we started, 99.9% of our work was private clients, commercial, hospitality, plazas, streetscapes, green roofs, corporate campuses. We have always had a passion for landscape architecture and with and sometimes being art. And so that has thrust us into conversations with the Wildflower Centre, with the Waterloo Greenway on Creek Show, and doing art installations ourselves. We've done Fortlandia, we've done Creek Show twice,
Oh, okay.
and have always believed that landscape and the public realm can inherently itself be artful, and how instead of just putting a preordained sculpture into a space, that the conversation should be much more blurry between architecture, place, landscape, and such. And so we do public parks. We work with higher educational facilities such as UT Systems with UTSA down in San Antonio. Austin Community College has been an amazing client over the years. And that diversification has been around cutting our teeth and proving ourselves and having built work and leveraging that. And in many cases in the public realm, understanding the huge differences in terms of how you solicit, how you process, and then how you win that work, and then how you manage it. We do work with cities as well. And it's every day is a learning curve in terms of the different project typologies, from a client in the Middle East to a client on Congress Avenue to working with the city of San Antonio, as an example.
How do you manage and sell like that sustainability piece that clients are sometimes focused on to really kind of drive that long-term ROI? Do you have that aspect of your business kind of intertwined?
We certainly do. I think for us, it's always been very important to practice what we preach, to kind of wear it as a badge of honor, that landscape architecture, by definition, is about being a steward of the environment, about understanding soil and plants, but also about hydrology and geology, about architecture and science, and thinking about heat and human comfort, and also then the environmental aspects of how we can use our work to reduce and lower maintenance and operation costs, and to make places healthier, to think about the social side of our work and to make places safer and cleaner and more engaging, and to allow retailers to turn the tables more times in a restaurant, or to have more sales in a store because the plaza and the programming in that space draws people and gets repeat clientele. And that drives the economics of landscape being that kind of beacon of success, often in many revitalization projects. So we definitely, as I said, that kind of badge of honor in terms of how we present our work through our social media, through our website, through the conversations that we always start with in terms of the values that we believe are important. And of course, listening acutely to the client's needs and objectives, the budget, the schedule. And then I think always having the spirit of saying, if the client wants X, let's always try and shoot for X10, and it might be X4, X7, something in between, but always kind of trying to demonstrate that as creatives, I think there's an expectation that our clients want us to bring a magical solution, something special. And so in doing that, that sense of the return on investment is inherently baked into every conversation we have, even the painful ones about value engineering. I mean, nobody
Yeah.
likes to value engineer their project, but it can actually be sometimes the sense of stripping away all the unnecessary parts to then develop a design that is most pure. And if you kind of change that mindset to gutting and slicing a project to, did we need those pieces in the first place? And I think that conversation is often important to have multiple times. And so that selling of the work we do, the selling of sustainability, I think is just, we are a different landscape architect that cares passionately about the public realm, the urban landscape, and the role
Yeah.
of ecology and sustainability and water scarcity in Central Texas and all of those things. And I think maybe it's built a little bit of a reputation. Maybe that's why some of our clients call us. But we
Yeah.
still have to be ambassadors and evangelists for that as well.
Yeah, in your client work, it looks like that you have really focused in, urbanism, and that really seems to drive your business. Do you see any trends in urbanism that are really driving kind of what that new business looks like for DWG?
Most certainly. I mean, I think design has always been a fairly cyclical thing.
Yeah.
There is always, I mean, fashion goes round and round in circles. I mean, bell bottoms
Yeah.
come back, etc. I'm not wearing bell bottoms just for the record, not today anyway. But so I lost my train
It
of thought.
is it is trendy right now.
It is, right. And landscape architecture is trendy right now. And I think that the definition of urbanism, the word you used, is for us, how and why does open space, the street that you walk on, the sidewalk, the plaza that you sit and have your coffee, the park that you go jogging in or run your dog in, why do those matter? And I think what's really remarkable in in almost every actually American city is that there is a kind of recalibration of most American cities were based on the efficiency of car. 60-70% of that public space is dedicated to moving these big blobs of metal around very efficiently. And then humans are relegated to a 4-foot sidewalk on the edge. And it's amazing that conversation is changing. Not everywhere, and it's not always appropriate everywhere, but that kind of sense of humanism in the urban fabric about making spaces more engaging so that you and I can sit longer in that plaza and cafe. And I'm a pasty white boy, and so I need to sit in the shade. And that, that beautiful oak tree in the corner of the plaza is really important, and understanding its roots and how we can make it grow better and making sure our spaces don't flood. And so that sense of green infrastructure and stormwater management. And then the other kind of big thing and trend in urban design, in urbanism, is that landscape is a performance, not a theatrical thing, although it can,
Yeah.
but a performance of soaking water, reducing flooding, reducing the temperature in that plaza, making it more human comfort, the performance of having infrastructure. And that's not pipes and storm drains. That's about thinking about nature-based solutions. And a tree is a nature-based solution. Otherwise, you have a shade umbrella, and
Yeah.
kind of working with that is, I think, those trends that are becoming more prolific now. Well, it's very exciting that landscape architecture is really at this kind of epiphany of what it means to have great spaces, from big cities to small towns to Pocket Park on Congress Avenue, where we just change a parking space into a place to have coffee. It's fun.
Yeah, and I think that there are probably some common misconceptions in urban infill and adaptive reuse, right? And it sounds like that's a lot of what your firm really thrives on. So, what makes a strong, like, adaptive reuse project from both a financial and a design perspective? What does that look like? And can you use that from not only here in Austin, but can you use adaptive reuse anywhere you go? Any clients you serve?
Yeah. I mean, adaptive reuse is really just a fun way of saying take something that has kind of come to the end of its life and recycle it. And whether you want to call it upcycling, recycling, adaptive reuse, adaptation. And I think in our cities, we can probably all walk around and say, there used to be a warehouse building there, and now it's a surface parking lot. Or that industry isn't there anymore. That space is blighted or full of weeds. And gosh, wouldn't it be nice too? And I think it's remarkable in rural America, small town America, big city, and across the board, not just landscape, but the sense of filling the gaps and being smart with how cities change and grow. One strategy is, yeah, that place is dirty and old, and let's go somewhere else. And you kind of sprawl out and you sprawl out and you sprawl out, and then traffic gets terrible. And thankfully, there is this kind of sense of, that steel mill was on the waterfront, and they needed it for transportation and shipping and water to cool the turbines, etc. But now it can be this research facility, this park on the river, this kind of sense of revitalizing and not necessarily scraping it clean. I think part of the really exciting part about adaptive reuse is that taking the elements of the past and using them again creatively. Does the shell of the old warehouse become a giant shade structure that you grow vines up and over? Is there a story about regeneration, about cleaning and healing and removing toxins and nasties from soils and I'll use the knitting needle kind of analogy again, rethreading a community back together again and bringing soul and spirit back to place? I think because for us, I mean, I think part of our most profound projects are those that have history, have layers, allows us to tell a better story. People inherently like, the stone that has been rubbed smooth on a walk, or a tree that has a kind of a really unique knot. So kind of artifacts of place allow us to tell these really rich stories that ultimately become, if you're really clever, part of the branding, part of the kind of the myth of this place, when it is now, an urban campus or a shopping mall or something else. It can be part of the mythology and story of what makes some place even more memorable.
So you mentioned that DWG is really selective about the projects that you pick up. What factors do you consider before deciding to want to really bid on a project?
I wish there was a winning formula. I really do.
Don't we all?
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult sometimes. I mean, gut reaction, alignment with mission vision. Man, what if we won that design competition? It would take us to the next level. It would be a hugely impactful, or that's perfectly aligned with our mission, vision, purpose, etc., etc. I think in public work, it's also about, is it doing good in terms of not just, is it feeding us and our kind of spirit of wanting to be better designers, but is it actually impacting the larger community? And I think that's a lot of Waller Creek as an example. We didn't lead that design competition. We were asked to participate with Michael van Valkenburg, who's probably one of the best landscape architects in the world right now. And it's the regeneration of Waller Creek that runs on the east side of downtown in Austin, that was previously sadly considered kind of something you would turn your back against. It was often considered kind of actually an open urban sewer, very romantic, and it can be, and now it's perceived with Waterloo Park and with the confluence and all of the economic growth that's changing around it, a beacon for the role of humanism and green infrastructure in a city to act as a really remarkable catalyst. And in that sense, when Michael asked us to consider being on his team, just the simple potential of what that competition could do to change that part of Austin, to have a global conversation around the role of landscape architecture. It was like, what do we need to do? Like, absolutely no hesitation, no questions asked. And the same was true when we were asked to, or we were given the opportunity to compete to be campus landscape architect for UTSA in San Antonio, of which we won. And it was amazing. And the opportunity to have conversations with the university system about their downtown campus and how they want to be a better steward of the fabric of downtown, make it more connected, more walkable, more engaging, more sustainable, more uplifting in terms of not just the students, but the community. And so I think it's really just being diligent of measuring the work against your own values. And then, of course, the chase and answering that RFP correctly and having your FAR rates and everything else correctly set up. As I said earlier, I mean, the nuance and, well, not the nuance, the real difference between public bids versus private proposals. And it is extremely different. But, trial, error, and consulting with brilliant other people who can help.
Don't you find it's funny that sometimes you actually have to work with, your fellow competitors to make a space come to life? I mean, I've found that a lot of architecture firms, AEC firms, they often have to collaborate together in order to make the dream come true, you know?
You're speaking my love language, Shannon, in terms of, I mean, as I said, I mean, it's corny and weird, but landscape architecture is these knitting needles, and it's like civil engineers over here, architects over here, clients over there. And it's a sense of the landscape can be considered one of two ways. It's an embellishment, it's lipstick to a thing that has already been figured out, or it is actually carefully coordinated, the grading, the utilities, the infrastructure, the trees, the shade, everything. And so that sense of collaboration is kind of the like rule book 101 of landscape architecture, of like, you are inherently a collaborator, whether you
Yeah.
like it or not. I mean, our role, landscape architecture never gets built without a robust team of others, whether it's a soil scientist, an ecologist, a civil engineer, a hydrologist, a historian, an architect, an archaeologist. I mean, the list goes on and on and on, and depends on the project type.
Yeah, I think that that's huge. You're like, it is my love language. So what has been the best investment you've made to really make DWG stand out in a really, quite frankly, it's really crowded. It's a crowded space. What do you
Hmm.
think that is?
That is a great question. And I think, really sincerely, the most critical investment we make is in talent.
I love that.
I think really ensuring that our team is well cared for, that the dynamics of remote working, of work-life balance, of family first, of benefits, of, you know, equal, diverse, and equitable pay, and all of the things around just being a good steward of the team. And my business partner, Eric, who in effect is kind of runs the role of chief financial officer, and the sense of being really driving home that sense of, it's a design firm. Yes, we all work really, really hard, but then also let's play hard. Let's actually take off the entire week between Christmas and New Year. Let's actually have time to kick back and remember that it is a work-life balance. And of course, I mean, the investment in our art installations and the kind of expression of who we are as designers, and the extra investment in our work and the time and curation of the website and the brand, and all of those things are really important. But I think that simple sense of the firm would be nothing if it wasn't for a bunch of really brilliant people that are way smarter than me and that love coming and working here. There's off days every once in a while, but for the most part, brilliant group. And I think, yeah, that investment is in that sheer talent.
That's fabulous. I love that. And it's really important to really see how architecture and especially landscape architecture can really change the space into a place that has meaning and brings, everybody together. And I think some of your projects have really defined that really well. Because of that, what do you think are some of your favorite projects that you have focused on that
Mm,
are just like really just have defined and changed the way that you have helped this community
yeah.
expand?
That's like asking which one of your children do you prefer? No, I'm joking a little bit. There's there's definitely, I mean, there's been some really magical moments. I think I'll say in the early days, Fairground for us was really special. A client that really lent in, really trusted to take a 1980s plaza that was lost in downtown, hidden effectively. No one knew it was there, to turn it into a semi-public park with Austin's first food hall and the celebration of nature and water innovation, the transformation that was for Congress and Second. I mean, that was a really, really special project. I think I've always loved the pocket patios, these tactical, short-term things that have morphed and evolved over the years. We have 10 in total between those that are built on Congress Avenue, one in San Antonio, several under construction or in design right now. How those are about leveraging and enabling small businesses, small retailers to be more accessible, more visible, have greater economic investment in space because they can seat more people and people can hang out a while. But they've had an impact on entire blocks. All the way up to the scale of, I mean, I mentioned Waller Creek. I mean, that really is um, massive in its scale. I mean, tens of acres, miles of influence throughout Austin. But of late, Shannon, there's a project called Springdale Green. It's in central East Austin at Airport and Springdale Road. Was a former petrochemical tank farm when the airport was where Mueller is today. Um, and it was a source of toxicity to the community, to the neighborhood. It was cleaned up. We had an opportunity to work with a developer out of the Bay Area, the J. Paul Company, and Gensler Architects here in Austin to reimagine that place into a place of revitalization, a 30-acre ecological transformation to restore the floodplain and the woodlands and the meadows, and to talk about woodpeckers and birds and possums and skunks and birds and critters and bugs and everything. And at the same time, imagining a workplace campus to, again, continue this conversation of Austin's evolution and Austin's commitment to nature and ecology, and this place being now fully complete, this oasis in the city of nature and natural systems that thousands of people get to enjoy now in a private, closed campus. But compared to a former tank farm that was seen as kind of the bane of the society of that side of East Austin, to now something that is performative and transformative and clean and healthy, is, I mean, for many of us, for myself personally, for Cassie, for Kevin, for Nick, for Holly, for the entire team, it's been a dream project of what it means to use our craft as landscape architects to bring good, something really transformative, and that's been wildly special. Really, really has.
Doesn't that just fill your cup It just,
That's what I mean. Yeah, I mean, work can really suck sometimes. I mean, it's
oh
not
yeah,
fun all the time. But think moments like that where you walk along this kilometer long woodland, this kilometer long boardwalk across meadows and up into the canopy of trees, and you sit in a bird blind and you see cardinal birds and squirrels, and you hear, and again, you're hundreds of feet away from Airport Boulevard, and you're in
right.
this center of the city, and yet you see no buildings, and you lose awareness of where you are. Yeah, those moments are special and very huge, huge emotions of pride and pride for the brilliance of the design team in terms of the collective spirit of what we were able to do. What the team. I mean, you talk about collaboration earlier. Boy, that project had a huge role for collaborators in terms of just making it something truly special, very complicated, lots of complex permits and floodplains and all this other stuff. And we did it.
Isn't that so fulfilling? I love that.
Yeah, it's been great.
So, what's on the horizon for DWG? What do you got going on next?
Oh, I mean, we're going to fix the world next.
Conquer the world.
No, no, no,
I
no,
love
no, no.
that.
There is no conquering. We are not conquerors. We're healers. We're more like spiritual shamans, really. Entirely legal, but spiritual shamans. I think for me, what's on the horizon? The increased synergy between Austin and London is really exciting. How we continue to kind of pivot and grow from being a local firm to an internationally sought out practice that is expected to bring brilliant transformations to really be meaningful for society, for the environment, and to be innovators and to really be more excellent in our design work, to be more efficient, to embrace artificial intelligence, to look at how we increase our workflow and be more effective with what we do, with training and teaching our staff to be even smarter. And then, yeah, I mean, growing, but growth doesn't always mean becoming the biggest or, as you said, conquering. I mean, growth is about just maturing and evolving and being more influential. And I think that finding greater clients, working with our great clients again. I mean, those would all be amazing opportunities to invest and learn of what happens in the future.
Do you think that the AEC landscape has shifted at all from where it was really somewhat non traditional to something that is very innovative in the way that you guys have evolved?
It's changing. There are some in our office that think it's not changing fast enough. There are dinosaurs like me that get afraid of too much change too fast. I often try and explain what we do is also we're part of the service industry, and consider me a bartender. And our practice is a bar, and we're serving you a drink. We want you to be happy. We want to serve you smartly and manage your consumption. We want you to talk about us in a good way, that we're the hottest bar in town and you want to bring all your friends here. And to do that, you have to continue to reinvent yourself and be innovative and always stay on the leading edge of the next trend or conversation. And so I do think that change is always inevitable. Landscape architecture as a profession is becoming more commonplace, more expected in the conversations around planning and master planning and visioning and change in cities. Our work is becoming more streamlined. When I was in school, I did technical drafting as a course, the physical art of learning how to use a set square and a triangle and different types of pens and pencils to draw all the details by hand. There are those in the office that now tease me for the fact that I know what some of these things are. But then came along AutoCAD, and now along comes along Revit and AI and our ability to conceptualize and visualize faster with rendering tools and 3D renderings instead of watercolors and hand illustrations. And they're all just tools to make us more efficient. They still need orchestration. They still need someone to point the band or the orchestra in the right direction. You need to know how to kind of push and pull the levers of all of those technologies to output the right product. And I think in that sense, it's really exciting, Shannon, that despite the seeming kind of terror and doom and gloom that AI is going to spawn terminators and take over the world, I don't know, but I do know that it has allowed us to have access to infinitely greater permeations and ideas that allow us to craft and be more creative. And I know that Revit is allowing us to output our construction documents faster and more accurately, and to be more synergistic with how the work then gets built. And those are good things. Mildly terrifying because it changes so fast, but sometimes my role is to be terrified and to step aside and let the younger generation say, "You are a dinosaur, but this is awesome. Let's rock it." And that's okay. That's change and how the firm evolves as well.
That's awesome to hear that. Do you often travel back and forth or from London to here, or are you mainly stateside?
The goal is to be back and forth once a quarter. The partners in the UK, one of which is in London, the other is in Valencia in Spain, who work brilliantly on a kind of a remote platform. They've been doing landscape architecture for 30 years as well as I have. And part of that is to empower them to step up and be their own brilliant selves, to craft their clients, and for me not to kind of, overstep or stumble over them, over each other. In another sense, my role is to be the kind of the curator, the evangelist, the kind of the preacher of the DWG brand. So I think, yeah, the back and forth between Austin and London will always be. And I hope in the near future will be for others in the firm as well, in terms of the back and forth. Working in London for this summer, wouldn't that be amazing? But also making time to go see our clients in Chicago and New York and San Francisco, and making trips that take a little bit more coordination, but across to the Emirates and seeing our clients in the Middle East. And that all takes time and coordination. But I think it's a slight tangent to your answer, but I think as a landscape architect, if you didn't want or like to travel, why are you in the profession that is all about inherently seeing the world and having an impact on the environment? And I think we only learn from the environments we go see. So I love to travel, and I genuinely excited. Will be over in London in June and at South by Southwest in London, which is the first time it's ever been in London, and spending time with clients, and then spending the summer there with family. So it's going to be great.
Wow. I can't wait to see what DWG does next. And it has been such a pleasure learning about what DWG has done to really impact, especially Austin. I mean, gosh, I love this city so much, and the evolution it has made and changed over the course of the years has been transformational. I mean, it's just incredible.
It's insane how much
Hmm.
Austin has changed just in the
Yeah.
last decade. And it's love the fact that Austin still is a little confused with its identity.
Mhm.
Weird.
It is. Keep
It is.
Austin weird. And
Yeah.
people like, I know that Austin doesn't want to like have that as their slogan, but
But it's
man,
perfect. It
it's
is.
just
It's like,
what would.
you've got politics, you've got education, you've got aging hippies, you've got nature and an emerging city. And there's so many things that you smush them all together and you say it shouldn't work. And it does. And it's not
It
without
does.
trial and error. Um, but it's a really exciting time to be in a city that is constantly reinventing itself, always trying to kind of preserve its sacred touchstones. I mean, the trail, Ladybird Lake, I mean, and the list goes on and on and on, many of which are natural things, and how that becomes more and more important as Austin becomes more and more of a city where I still think of it as a town right now in terms of the globalization. And it's going to be fun to see where it goes next.
Isn't it though? I mean, it's going to be engaging and memorable and resilient. And all of those things are going to just change the way that Austin has been perceived and where it's going in the future. And you're in the middle of it.
Yeah. And in the early years of the firm, we had an ad hoc tagline that everything was subject to change. And while we don't use it often anymore, it's still so relevant to the work that we do today and the work we'll do tomorrow in terms of change is not a bad thing. Done carefully, done thoughtfully, done in consideration of everybody, kind of finding consensus and celebrating. Yeah, go hug a tree. That's the party line.
Go hug a tree. I love that. Well, it's been great having you here and chatting with you about just all the cool stuff that you have going on, not only stateside, but also across the pond.
Well, Shannon, I really, this has been so much fun. I really appreciate you reaching out, really appreciate the opportunity to tell the story.
Yeah. Yeah, I love having, and I've spoken to so many people just in this experience of trying to collaborate. And it's just been really cool to see how I feel like AEC in general is kind of the nexus and is the collaborators in making our world beautiful. And I love that. Well, thank you for joining me today. And I can't wait to see what DWG has going on in the future.
I will see you in the park and
All right.
have a wonderful weekend. Thanks again.
All right. Thank you. Take care.